Drop it. Power panel. Cenk, Uygur, John Iadarola, Nina Turner with you guys. Of course, you can catch John on Damage Report, Nina on Rebel Headquarters. Nina, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Good to have you. We've got a whole bunch of stories for folks. DeSantis is in trouble. He's reeling. He's reorganizing. We got that and a lot more. But before we get started with any of that, I am going to jump in with a story that made some headlines yesterday and affected somebody on the panel. So, Nina, yesterday you were attacked by the New Hampshire Libertarians, and you had mentioned that insulin should be free, like it is in most developed countries, and they thought that was so offensive that they told you that you should pick crops for free, which seemed, I don't know, racist. So, what was your reaction to that?
Yeah, not just seem, Cenk, it is racist. It's not just racist, it's anti-black through and through. So a lot of things that he could have said, they could have disagreed with me on my policy position. It's just quite telling how just a tweet about insulin, because I want our viewers to know, I only tweeted that insulin should be free. And these fools came back with that. And not only that, they made a meme of me and Candy. For those of you who've ever seen the movie Django, you will see that reference. And they put a picture of me up and also a picture of that character up about cotton. So it's very clear what they were doing. This is not veiled. This is clearly not just racism, but it is anti-black racism. That is a whole nother level of racism. And thank you, Cenk. You and Anna covered it yesterday. I know John covered it as well. We've gotten several articles out of this. But what is very telling is that what the New Hampshire Libertarian Party has done, the National Party has not condemned it. People, the Libertarian parties across the country have just doubled, quadrupled down on this. It is very telling beyond what they did to me, that this essence, the spirit of being anti-black and exhibiting racism just all out in the open is in vogue now. And you have that, couple that with DeSantis and teaching that enslaved people learn skills during slavery. Ugh. I mean, I've just about had enough.
Yeah, so Nino, it's not surprising that they would attack you because you're a prominent progressive, and progressives are the only ones that are saying that we should check the drug industry and the healthcare industry and actually look out for the average American. Republicans certainly aren't saying that. Establishment Democrats aren't saying that. So if they wanted to pick on someone, you would be a logical target because you're one of the very, very few people who are arguing for those incredibly popular positions in the country. So, but what I can't understand about the libertarians is, so have they just kind of said at this point, yeah, we're just pro corporations, so that's the only thing we care about? So why were they offended by the tweet? I get that they are offended, progressive trying to do something, strong figure trying to, and might have an effect. I get all that. And we're gonna attack them with racism. I get that, right? So unfortunately, that is now pretty standard fare in right-wing world. But is the libertarian philosophy, we think, and why the National Party isn't condemning it, et cetera, like, hey, how dare you guys try to regulate our beloved corporations? We should not be like the rest of the developed world. These drugs should bankrupt us, and you should lose your homes, and it should all go to corporate executives. Is that the big, great libertarian argument being made?
Well, I'm not sure, Cenk. Hey, listen, they need to come on the show and explain themselves and how, I don't know if it's about corporations as much as it is about, for me, it is about them being just total bigots and anti-black, whether they're pro-corporate. There are many ways to be pro-corporation without being anti-black or racist. And they've definitely ticked off every single box and still raging as we speak. But Cenk, I don't know, let's have them on the show.
Yeah, well, okay, that ought to be interesting. So we'll work on that. And my last thought on it is, this political spectrum that we have, guys, it's so broken and so chaotic. I thought the libertarians were less racist than that, Republican politicians. Now it looks like they're more racist. I've lost track of all the different hatreds going on from all the different groups, but that was over the top. Reference to crops to a black woman, that is crazy, 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 and that's the world we live in today. So Nina, thank you for fighting for everybody and then for fighting past that.
Well, thanks, Cenk, for bringing it up. And may I make one more point about that? It is very reminiscent of, colored water fountain, white water fountain. I mean, they said the quiet part very much out loud, which is supposed to be taboo in the 21st century, but as we can see, it is not. So let us not forget that even things that we felt like we have overcome, things that we thought were in the past in this country, justice is not a destination, it is indeed a journey.
Indeed. Yeah. All right.
And not only not taboo on Twitter, but they had a pretty good shot of getting the richest man in the world to, retweet them, lend a little bit of support. Like they were saying the sort of stuff that is very much being advantaged on Twitter right now.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't banned. It was like, an obvious, overt reference to slavery, to a prominent, powerful black woman in the country. I mean, it's totally over the top, totally beyond any line. And Elon Musk's like, oh, that looks pretty good. Okay, yeah, no consequence at all. The only consequence might be, to John's point, who knows, maybe he'll start paying them now, right? Like he's paying like the most extreme people on Twitter and only the most extreme people. So maybe that's now the new way to get attention, Elon Musk's attention and get paid, is to be this outrageously offensive. I hope not, but this is not a good sign.
Why don't we turn to other news?
Yep.
Let's do it. Donald Trump may soon be facing more charges. And I know what you're thinking. Again, yes, again, but this particular case is distinct in a couple of different ways. So first of all, you can file this under the category of this would be state level charges, which are important because his plan with the federal charges appears to be to just wait things out, become president again, and then wipe the slate clean with his presidential powers. In this particular case, he probably would not be able to do that. Also, with the charges we're gonna be discussing here, he might have some company for once. You don't want the president rotting away in jail all by his lonesome. In this case, there might be a lot of people being charged along with Donald Trump. So we're talking here about the Fulton County investigation into the attempt to overturn Georgia's presidential election results in 2020. And the district attorney there investigating that effort has apparently developed evidence to charge a sprawling racketeering indictment next month, according to two different people that have been briefed on the matter. So you've probably heard of racketeering charges on shows, maybe on The Sopranos or something. In this particular case, what do they mean? Well, racketeering is defined as a type of organized crime in which the person sets up a coercive, fraudulent, extortionary, or otherwise illegal scheme or operation to collect a profit. And there's a couple different things that they're gonna need to do to prove that. So apparently, they're gonna need to prove at least 2 qualifying crimes to show a pattern of racketeering activity. And apparently the district attorney of Fulton County, Fannie Willis, has evidence to pursue that on a couple different areas, including influencing witnesses, which brings to mind the apparent focus on witness tampering that we saw in the recent target letter sent by the special counsel to Donald Trump. In this case, you also have computer trespass. So we're gonna help explain where they might be going in a couple of those areas of charges. So first of all, they have the call that Donald Trump had with Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, in which he asked Raffensperger to find 11,780 votes. The perfect phone call, of course. So that seems pretty cut and dried. But then you also have computer trespass. So there, prosecutors would have to show that defendants used a computer or network without authority to interfere with a program or data that would include the breach of voting machines in Coffee County. So basically, a group of operatives working for the Trump campaign that were being paid by Sidney Powell apparently accessed voter machine information and then copied that material and put it on a password-protected website so that they and other election deniers could access it and use it in their fruitless efforts to overturn the results of the election. Now, the fact that it happened in Coffee County would normally mean that it's off limits to a Fulton County investigation, but because they're investigating this under the auspices of racketeering, it might be possible for them to include that anyway. We have other updates, and we don't know for sure that this is how these charges are gonna go down. And when they say that it's wide ranging, that this is a sprawling racketeering indictment, we don't know how many people that means. If it's even going to include Donald Trump, it could be 5 or 6 of his campaign aides, it could be some lawyers, it could be people involved in the fake elector scheme or the computer trespassing scheme, or everybody. They could just load up the clown car. We don't know at this point.
Yeah, the reason to call it racketeering is so that it is a collection of different activities and crimes that goes towards the same goal, the same scheme, right? So that's why Trump calls in and says, find me 11,780 votes. Now, I actually think that that's not as clear cut as John said it. I'll explain why in a second. But then you also have the tampering with the voting machines. That's pretty serious. Now, if you're just tampering with voting machines just to have fun, that's one thing. But if you're doing it in concert with other events to try to overturn the election, well, then you have a much more serious crime, right? And then there's a third element here. Part of the reason that these charges have been delayed for a while is because they have been flipping fake electors in Georgia. So you saw fake electors being charged in Michigan. You see Jack Smith has flipped a couple of fake electors in different states on his federal case, and he's a special prosecutor. And now we see in Georgia, they've also flipped fake electors. So these fake electors are very important because those are the guys who were not the electors, and oftentimes not the electors of Donald Trump either. They have slates of electors based on who wins. Whoever wins, those electors go to the Electoral College. In this case, it was Biden who won Georgia. And Trump's team was like, all right, forget Biden's electors who are the duly elected ones. Forget Trump's potential slate of electors. Let's just find other fake electors and have them sign a document saying we're the real electors. Well, that's a forgery, that's fraud. And so that is a big problem to those folks who signed that document, but it is also part of the same scheme, the same racketeering organization, like the crimes that are being charged here. And so when you put all those together, you go, oh, I see, they're trying to flip the election in Georgia. The reason why I said the perfect call, as Trump calls it, is not a slam dunk by itself, is because there is some vagueness in saying, find me the votes, right? For example, if he had not mentioned the number and he had only said it once and he said, hey, are you finding any different votes? That would be okay, I think, right? If I was on the jury.
Did you see Finding Nemo?
That's totally fine. Did you find fraud? Totally fine, right? The reason why it's not totally fine in this case is he says the exact number of votes he needs. And so like if you were trying to find a way for it to be specific enough to count, you would say exactly what Trump said. So that's why it's ironic that he calls it the perfect call, because it perfectly implicates him. But still, find me 11,780 votes. A juror with leaning MAGA might go, well, he didn't say invent 11,780 votes. He just said find them magically, even though the guy just said on the call twice that there are no such votes, right? But when you put that again with the machine that's being tampered with, you put it with the fake elector scheme, and then the jury goes, oh yeah, they're trying to illegally change the votes in Georgia to pretend that Trump won, and that is a massive crime. Nina.
Yeah, the point there about putting all of those things together, where there's smoke, there's definitely fire. But we do know that Trump has managed to have more than 9 lives at this particular point in his life and career. So we will see. But you know what this reminds me of, Cenk and John? You know, he was all about lock her up. You know, that karma is coming back on him real swift. He might find himself being the one locked up. And then secondly, for Donald J. Trump, this is all about the attention. He is getting all the attention that he could ever want. And if you want a formidable spin master, you will find one in Donald J. Trump. So this will be interesting, to say the least, how this goes. I think there was a Chinese proverb that says something like, may we live in interesting times. Well, we're living in them right now.
Well, I would tell whoever came up with a Chinese proverb, be careful what you wish for. Okay, and you're right, Nina, on both fronts. He's the center of an attention hurricane, and he loves that. And it does keep him in the press, and he does have a 30-point lead on DeSantis. He does get to paint himself as a victim. The Republicans love being fake victims. That's their favorite thing in the whole wide world. But at the same time, Republicans claiming, oh my God, can you believe the Democrats are trying to lock him up for an actual crime? The crime of, by the way, doing a coup against America. Can you believe that? You guys are chanting, lock her up, based on, by the way, this same category of law, but much flimsier charges with a lot less evidence and a lot less severe. I mean, the hypocrisy of Republican voters knows no bounds.
I heard Marjorie Greene was one of the first people that was asked for comment after the targeting letter. And she, without taking a breath between it, said, how dare they weaponize the DOJ by going after their political opponents to distract from Joe Biden and Hunter Biden's crimes. Like, she went swiftly from, you can never go after your opponents, to they're only doing it because they're trying to stop us from going after our opponents. And nobody, in her district is gonna have an issue with that. I think it's time we take our first break. We'll be back with more after this.
All right, back on the TYT Power Panel, Cenk, John Iadarola, Nina Turner with you guys, and also Maria Schumacher, who just became a member. We appreciate her. Maria, thank you for doing that. You make honest reporting possible that we do at TYT here. She did that by hitting the join button below the video. You can as well if you're on YouTube, if not tyt.com/join. All right, John, what's next?
Okay, let's jump into some more legal dramas. You might not be familiar with the company Digital World Acquisition Corporation, but there's another company that might ring a bell. That's the Trump Media and Technology Group, which you probably heard in reference to Truth Social. Well, those two companies have sort of been dancing around coming together for some time, with Digital World trying to merge with Trump Media. Well, Digital World now has something else on its plate, that is fraud charges by the SEC, that importantly, thus far, do not involve Donald Trump specifically, although they do apparently involve Trump Media and Technology Group. And we want to give you all the details and catch you up with this weird legal back and forth. So Digital World announced its initial public offering way back in September of 2021. And when it did that, it told investors that its executives had not participated in any merger discussions with any company. So you can't have done that at that point. So they reassured their investors, we're complying with the law, we're not doing anything like that. Well, that was found to not be the truth, because apparently at that time, Patrick Orlando was the chief of Digital World and had apparently been discussing a merger with Trump Media for 7 months at that point. And the SEC has text messages and other exchanges that apparently prove that. So there's your fraud, at least according to the SEC. It's not the only crime that they're caught up in. Federal prosecutors in New York last month charged a former Digital World board member and 2 other men with earning $22 million in illegal profits as part of an insider trading scheme before the Trump Media merger proposal was publicly announced. And so this is of course going to have to develop, and perhaps we'll learn more about those communications, how far along the discussions were, if there were other lies that were caught up in it. But we do know that if the merger does eventually go through, which is still possible, the SEC is going to fine them $18 million. Which seems like a lot of money, I think, to regular people. But when you hear some of the numbers that they had been making claims about their worth as corporations, it certainly doesn't seem like a lot. That said, both companies have, since late 2021, suffered some damage to their bottom line. Digital World's share price is down to $13 from a high of $175.
Oops.
Ooh, that's gonna hurt. I mean, it's not necessarily like NFT level bad investment, but it's not a good return on your dollar. And then on the side for Trump Media and Technology, in a financial disclosure filing this month covering much of his post-presidency period, Trump said that Trump Media had earned about $1.2 million in advertising. And it also said that Trump Media's value, which was estimated in late 2021 to potentially climb to $1.7 billion, was now no more than $25 million, right around the same amount of money that those former digital world people had apparently scammed with insider trading. So not good times for either of them. Even if they do merge, it's hard to see at this point, what is that company even? Is it even really a big factor? Is Truth Social really a place that's gonna make any money? But they could face more charges for all we know.
Yeah, so it is astounding how much money Donald Trump has lost in his life. I mean, it might break a record. He is almost certainly the worst businessman in the history of the United States of America. And it's so ironic because one of his strengths is that, I'm a big businessman, I'll figure it out, order the deal. And all the Republicans believe it 100%. And that's why the Democratic Party drives me crazy. They keep attacking him on him being a racist, bigot, etc. I don't know if you know this, but the whole country knows that. They already know that. And unfortunately, that has become a strength for him in the right wing. And that is greatly dispiriting for the nation, but that's just a reality. Move on and undercut his strengths. And in this case, I cannot describe to you how terrible a businessman he is, but I'm gonna try. So this is another case where he's involved in fraud. Okay, now it's not Trump, it's his partner, potential partners in this case, right? But guys, there's $1.7 billion on the line, and it was totally realistic. I did a segment on this when the news broke of the SPAC, and I know how SPACs work. And Trump could have had over $1 billion. If I was him and they're talking to me ahead of the SPAC, I would have already researched, can you talk to me ahead of a SPAC? And given that there's over $1 billion on the line, I would have been like, get off the phone, right? Because I would not be a terrible businessman. I wouldn't want to lose $1 billion. But he's like, oh yeah, let's talk on the phone, let's do this, okay? And now, all right, here, so let me show you all the money he's lost on this deal and the other deals. Let's go to Graphicate. So in this case, he took $1.7 billion, turned it into 25 million if he's lucky, and that's a loss of $1.675 billion. Nicely done, Donnie. And remember, Donnie got all of his money in the beginning from his dad, so let me explain that. New York Times in 2018 wrote this: Trump received the equivalent today of at least $413 million from his father's real estate empire, starting when he was a toddler and continuing to this day. So he blew the whole $413 million. He's like, I got a small loan back in the 1970s from my dad of $1 million. That is not a small loan. It's not a small loan today. Definitely wasn't a small loan in the 1970s. And it's not even true, you didn't get $1 million. You got $413 million. But he blew it all. That's why he was doing all these little scams like Trump University, give me $10,000 and you could take a picture with a cutout Donald Trump picture, and you won't get Action University. Obviously, we're gonna scam you. Trump charity was a scam, and these are all low-level scams. And by the way, I'm calling them scams. Is that right? Yeah, he settled. He said, yeah, it was a scam. Here's the fine I'm paying. He's a con man. He's a two-bit con man because he already blew the $400 million. But wait, I'm not done yet. Trump's tax documents revealed that he netted $427 million in earnings, endorsements, and licensing from 14 seasons of The Apprentice. Now, look, you could say, hey, he earned that by being a celebrity on television and he did a great job of hosting and etc. Now, in reality, Jeff Zucker, who ran NBC at the time, was like, look, we need some sort of schmuck to go on here and do this show. Any schmuck who does it will get $427 million. Now, to be fair, not any schmuck, but almost any schmuck. And they're like, well, Jeff, Donald Trump is a failed businessman. He's had 6 bankruptcies. He can't run a business if his life depended on it. And Zucker was like, who cares, it's TV. We'll just lie to them and pretend he's a good businessman. So that wound up giving him another 427. He blew that too, oh my God. That's why he's always like, oh, send me money, send me money. Even if you remember when he claimed to have 10 billion? Okay, of course he doesn't. But even if he just kept the 800 some odd million from his dad and from his second dad, Jeff Zucker, who later ran CNN and helped to make him president. If he just kept that 800 million, let alone the 1.7 billion, he'd be infinitely rich and he wouldn't need any of your guys' money or anything like that. But he's still running 2-bit scams. Send for my legal defense. Oh yeah, I spent it on rent at my properties, and I increased the rent by 4 times and it screwed over my own voters. He does those stupid cons because he's a miserable failure as a businessman. And oops, he did it again. Nina.
Yeah, I mean, he can't help himself. If at first you don't succeed, try again. And if at first you don't fail deeply enough, keep on trying. I mean, that is Trump. And then the point about him being still a toddler, very much so. And that is an insult to toddlers. And in terms of the money, his father giving him a small loan. I guess small is relative. I mean, when you live the kind of extra privileged life that Donald J. Trump has, and people not saying no to you, and you've been given everything, this is what you fully expect. And he comported himself this way. So, Cenk, the fact that you're laying out how he got here tells us almost all we need to know about his presidency, about why he ran, why he comported himself in office that way, why he's doing what he's doing right now in a fight for his life in some ways. This is Donald Trump's MO. This is how he rolls. He doesn't know how to do anything else but to scam people and then to cry victim, because this has worked for him all of his life.
Yeah, come to think of it, now that you framed it that way, Nina, I just realized who his third daddy is, and that's MAGA. So, he took the 400 million from, Papa Trump, then he took the 400 some odd from NBC and Zucker, and now he's like, MAGA, you're my new daddy. Gimme, 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 gimme. And you guys can't even afford it, but you're paying for me, and I'm claiming to be a billionaire. Ha ha, joke's on you. And that's what Trump always does. And he brags about it when it comes to people who make the mistake of trusting him to give him money for an investment. He brags later like, oh yeah, that's what a smart businessman does. You declare bankruptcy and you go, ha ha, I stiffed you. You dumb lenders, you should have never trusted me. And that's it.
I mean, he constantly says he's playing by the rules. Remember in the debates in 2016 when they asked him about taxes, he said, I'm playing by the rules. If you don't like it, change the rules. I mean, this is what this man does. He is the ultimate snake oil salesman.
Exactly, that's such another great point. So he stiffed investors, then he stiffed taxpayers, and now he's stiffing MAGA. And he's like, yeah, keep giving to me, you schmucks. Come to True Social, participate in every one of my scams, those dumbass NFTs that you could find online. Give me, because you're my third daddy. So MAGA, enjoy your toddler, Donnie Trump.
Only thing I want to add to this is I think that you make a good case that he's the worst businessman in history. We can't say for sure yet, but there is someone who is trying to eclipse him. If you could spend $44 billion on Twitter and burn the entire thing down, I think Trump wishes he could lose that much money, but remains to be seen. Maybe he'll right the ship and Twitter will be awesome and profitable. Anyway, I think we should probably take our second break. We've got a big story to talk about involving Ron DeSantis in one of the most ridiculous lawsuits I've ever heard proposed. All that and more after this.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk, John, and Nina with you guys. John, take it away.
We will. Let's jump into this.
We're going to be launching an inquiry about Bud Light and InBev, and it could be something that leads to a derivative lawsuit filed on behalf of the shareholders of the Florida pension fund, because at the end of the day, there's got to be penalties for when you put business aside to focus on your social agenda at the expense of hardworking people.
So it's pretty clear at this point that a bunch of conservatives lighting up cases of Bud Light with assault rifles wasn't enough to kill Anheuser-Busch. But don't worry, they have a backup plan, and Ron DeSantis is previewing it right there. Just yesterday, he sent a letter to the manager of Florida's state pension fund, which owns shares of InBev. He urged the manager to consider suing the company because he said it, quote, breached legal duties owed to its shareholders by going woke. Going woke, of course, is a strictly defined legal thing, and they did it. Anyway, he explained to Jesse Waters, we had the pension fund. Ron DeSantis, I'll remind you, you don't have anything. Even a snowball's chance of hell in winning the Republican primary. We had over $50 million worth of InBev stock, and Florida's pension fund's about $180 billion. So you can understand why Ron DeSantis would be so hyper-focused on this one particular share stock's performance in the pension fund. I mean, after all, it does make up 0.028% of the fund's portfolio. And after months of being battered by Republicans for hyper-focusing on what one company, Disney, is doing in Florida, why not focus in a hyper, insane fashion on what InBev is doing? I want to remind you, by the way, Anheuser-Busch is still down from before they did an extremely limited partnership with Dylan Mulvaney, who has done absolutely nothing wrong. The stock is down about 12% since that started. To put that in perspective, the stock is where it was at in February of this year. But the fact that it's 12% down, specifically because of the advocacy of people like Ron DeSantis, he thinks that the company can be sued. That basically they're gonna turn go woke, go broke into a legal strategy going forward. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not involved in any of this stuff, but I would imagine that his statements about Bud Light are gonna be a part of that trial if it happens. He tried to tank the stock of that apparently is such an important part of his state's pension fund. But this is what he's doing. I don't know if this is the solution to the problems he's having in his attempt to take down Donald Trump, or maybe he's already sort of kissed that goodbye and he's just trying to reassert his popularity inside of Florida. But this doesn't seem like it's addressing the issues that regular Americans are concerned with.
I am actually a lot more excited about this than John is. I think it's an interesting precedent. Do I think he's gonna win? No, John's right, it's very unlikely. Having said that, wait, we can sue corporations for political actions? Can we sue them for donating to politicians? And what if people point out that they donate to politicians, then people get really mad and their stock goes down? Does that mean they've breached some sort of responsibility to pension funds in blue states as well as red states? Well, you are opening up an interesting can of worms, Ron DeSantis. And that's why, by the way, his donors are worried about this line of attack. The Republican establishment is very worried, and they were supporting, all these people were supporting Ron DeSantis. Now all of a sudden, the Republican establishment was like, I don't know about attacking corporations. They're our daddies. What are you doing? You can't hit daddy. And then finally, the folks that are the most concerned are, I mean, I said the establishment, but other Republican politicians, they're like, what are you doing? These guys fund all of our campaigns. If you open up the store and progressives run through it, what if they can't participate in politics anymore? How would Republicans ever win a single election without getting bankrolled to the tune of billions of dollars by these corporate interests? So you want to keep going, DeSantis? And finally, of course, media, which we'll get to in a second. Corporate media and all portions of corporate media, mainstream media, right-wing media, they're all furious with them because if corporations get out of politics, then they won't have an extra $17 billion in political ads next cycle. So the media is like, wait a minute, okay, and then he brags about that. No, you missed the point. But we're gonna get back to the media in a second. Nina.
Cenk, that epiphany about, oh my God, DeSantis is on to something that we might be able to use. I'm loving that. I didn't see that either. You took that all the way to the hole on that one. But I wanted to say about the sanctimonious, which I think Trump labeled him quite nicely there. He's empty. He is an empty suit. Florida, please, y'all know that you can do much better. Shame on you for unleashing this fool on us. And we must make sure he never becomes president of the United States of America. He wants to talk about, mishandling the funds. He's mishandling the funds of the taxpayers of that great state. Shipping migrants all over the country using taxpayers' dollars to do that. Boxing with Minnie and Mickey Mouse and Daisy and Donald Duck Duck and Goofy and the rest of them. I mean, what kind of sorry, lonely, sad man must you be to pick a fight with the Disney characters? And then woke is not working for him. I mean, I want our viewers to understand this. The polling has been done, and the majority of the American people and also the people in that state, they care about the damn economy. Stupid, it is the economy. That is the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth concern. They do not care about his war on woke. It's not working for him whatsoever. He's a desperate man grasping at straws. He is weak, he is a coward, and he's also a bigot on top 100%. Of that.
Yeah, before we play this compilation, I just want to remind everyone, because I don't think that you can be reminded enough, that while everyone obviously can make their own decisions about whether they're gonna support a company or not, and if you start a boycott, we may not always agree with why you're doing it. People were mad at Chick-fil-A for donating to legal efforts that were discriminatory against members of the LGBTQ community. We can all evaluate all these individual things. I just want to remind everyone, they sent a promotional six-pack to Dylan Mulvaney as a way of saying, hey, I'm glad that you're happy. That's it. Dylan Mulvaney hasn't done anything. Yeah. Dylan Mulvaney did not kill a bunch of nuns or anything. I just want to remind everyone, that's the entire genesis of their frustration with Anheuser-Busch, is they sent a promotional six-pack to a perfectly lovely human being.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right to point that out, John. I want to point out one other thing before you watch this clip. So when DeSantis launched, we showed you all the clips of the entire media being like, "Oh, DeSantis, what a wonderful, amazing entrant! Oh, this good, yeah, that's it. Trump is done." And remember, after the midterms, all of Trump's candidates lost. Everybody thought he was done, and everybody had high praise for DeSantis on all the cable channels. But then he attacked Disney, a corporation, and corporate media. All of a sudden, just like we tell you guys all the time, found a way to unite. Oh, when we're fighting how sexy M&Ms are, Mr. Potato Head, the other things, oh, we're all fighting, we don't like each other. It's an economic issue that affects corporations. All of a sudden, they're not fighting anymore. Let's watch.
Governor DeSantis is close to making a fool of himself with his Walt Disney obsession.
Talk about stepping on a rake, getting in a fight with your largest employer.
If you're gonna take on every business that decides to celebrate the LGBTQ plus community, you're gonna be taking on a lot of different woke corporations. It worked when he was beating Disney, but he got outmaneuvered, and now it just seems this petty tit for tat. What is the end game here in sight?
This is a big employer inside Florida. I think the governor should sit down with him. I don't think the idea of building a prison next to a place that you bring your family is the best idea. I think it would be much better if you sat down and solved the problems.
Look at that, conservative channels and so-called liberal channels and so-called moderate channels, they all agree, do not attack corporations. So whether they're right-wing like CNBC and Fox News is, or pretend left-wingers like MSNBC, are saying these are all part of corporate media. Mainstream media and right-wing media actually do good cop, bad cop on us, just like the Republicans and Democrats do. And so as long as DeSantis or any other politician, Biden, Pelosi, McConnell, are being good boys and little girls, well, then they will get praise on these channels. And on economic issues, they always close ranks. MSNBC and all the other so-called left-wing channels also hated the idea of getting rid of student debt. They all hated the idea of Medicare for all. Every anchor, every pundit spoke out against it. Interesting that when it comes to protecting the status quo and multinational corporations, corporate media, all agree. They're trying to distract you with the culture wars, when in reality, the whole establishment serves corporate interests.
If we go into a 2024 scenario where it's basically a redo of 2020 between Trump and Biden, what does that say? That we have nobody better than these two? And so an independent or somebody who is offering something in the middle, people are hungry for that.
That is Senator Lisa Murkowski, a Republican senator who doesn't like the prospect of either Biden or Donald Trump becoming president again. But she does throw out an independent, a third option, which she defines as being someone in the middle, in the way that people like her use that term, not the way a rational person would, but we'll get into that. She actually has an idea of who that should be. Watch this.
Would you support him if he decided to run?
I tell you, if it's a matchup between Biden and Trump, I know exactly where I'd go. I would go with Joe Manchin. I am one who doesn't like to use my vote for the lesser of evils. I want to be proactive in who I think could do the job.
How would you determine that vote wouldn't send Trump back to the White House?
I would really have to do some serious evaluation. And again, this is July of 2023, and who knows what's going to happen in the months ahead. We just don't know.
She doesn't know. Of course, no one can know at this point, but she doesn't seem particularly troubled by it. I will say that the possibility of Joe Manchin running as a third-party candidate under the no labels party affiliation or whatever certainly could play a factor either nationally or in individual states. We really don't know. At this point, there's very limited polling, although polling that did just come out this week from Monmouth University shows that while Biden is currently beating in a two-way matchup Trump by 7 points, once you throw Joe Manchin in, his lead over Trump drops to 6 points. It's only a 1 point difference. So at least as of right now, Joe Manchin does not seem to have a big effect on the race. I'm sure as the country gets to know him better, they'll be won over by his charisma and how well he represents the average working man, as all of us obviously feel towards him. But anyway, I just think it's ridiculous. Like throwing out a third party option, totally understand it. There are people who, like Lisa Murkowski, are not happy with either of them. But the idea that simply because Joe Manchin isn't either of them, that means that he's in the center. I would ask, in the center on what? Does he represent the vast bulk of the American population on the issue of abortion, one of the biggest issues of the last election, on climate and the environment, on wages, labor? Where exactly does he represent the silent majority that's not being represented by the two major parties?
So, guys, I think this is one of the biggest deceptions in American political history. And it's not just about Joe Manchin and Murkowski. It's the idea that these politicians, that the establishment media and everyone else in the establishment in both political parties in Washington call moderate are actually moderate. They are not. They call them moderate and centrist because they're at the center of Washington. But Washington is both corrupt, very much pro-corporate, and also very right-wing. So I talk about that in my upcoming book, Justice is Coming, and I show definitively how Washington, D.C. is far more right-wing than the rest of the country. And so they go, well, Manchin is in between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. That's not true on several levels. First of all, Joe Biden and Joe Manchin are nearly indistinguishable. They have nearly identical records in the Senate. Then as president, Joe Biden said, well, I'm much more left-wing than guys like Joe Manchin. Now I will be a progressive. And he introduced a bunch of policy proposals that actually did seem progressive. And then he didn't fight for any of them, and he let them all die. And he passed a bunch of things that help corporations. Some of them tangentially help the American people, like you'll get more bridges and a little bit more internet access. So they weren't all bad, but they all go to corporations first. And then he gave Joe Manchin the Mountain Valley Pipeline. He allowed drilling in Alaska. All of these conservative positions that agree with Manchin. And then when it came to progressive issues like paid family leave, higher minimum wage, public option, some of them he threw off the plane immediately. As soon as he got in, did an interview on national television, said, oh, the higher minimum wage is not gonna happen. Public option, he didn't even propose. And they go, oh, Jake, you can't say he was lying about being in favor of the public option. He didn't even propose it. He didn't even try because he never meant it. He's still just as conservative as Joe Manchin. So the entire first 2 years Joe Biden's term was, oh, golly gee, me and Joe Manchin happened to agree again. Oh, the only things that passed were the things that me and Joe Manchin agreed on for our entire careers. But you see how I'm so far to the left of Joe Manchin? No, I don't see it at all. Okay, so that leads us to the main deception. What the hell are you guys calling moderate? Joe Manchin's positions are deeply unpopular. The example I often use, but you could use dozens of examples. Paid family leave, polls at 84%. Joe Manchin is against it. So it didn't pass. Joe Biden's like, oh, Manchin's against it? Oh, golly gee, I wish we had passed paid family leave. But with only 84% of Americans in favor of it, including 74% of Republicans, I just couldn't find a way to pass it, right? No, that is not a moderate position. That is a radical. It's not even fair to call it a right-wing position because the right wing agrees with us. 3/4 of them do. It's a very pro-corporate position. And yet everyone in media says, and there's Murkowski, a so-called another moderate, in her case a Republican, and all the press calls her on it. And they're all like, oh yeah, the moderate position is to be with 16% of Americans. How could that possibly be true? No, they're all doing a mass lie to you guys. It is propaganda and brainwashing of extreme proportions. And unfortunately, they're so much more subtle than Fox News. They're so good at that propaganda. Paid family leave polls at 84, I told you. Minimum wage lifting it to $15 polls at around 2/3 of Americans. The public option polls at 70%. I can give you dozens of more, and I do in my book, Justice is Coming. They're all intensely popular and hence moderate. But everyone in Washington, including all of the liars in mainstream media, go, no, those are radical left positions, the kind that Joe Biden has. He doesn't have them and they're not radical left, they're moderate positions. And instead they take a radical right-wing corporate person like Joe Manchin and they call him moderate. He is not the midpoint between Biden and Trump. And by the way, all three of the presidential candidates, if Manchin gets in, he's not in yet, would be significantly more right-wing than the average American, including Joe Biden. Nina.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Do not fall for the banana in the tailpipe, please. They are so far removed from what the everyday average American in this country wants, and they don't care. They just don't care. I mean, Cenk, you rattled off a list. I'm taking copious notes, crossing out stuff. Even if we just take the child tax credit, for example. Manchin didn't want it, so it got X. So a program that lifted children out of poverty was not extended because the shadow president, Joe Manchin, did not want it to be extended. Minimum wage not increased when the Democrats had control of both chambers of the United States Congress and the presidency. He didn't want to do away with the filibuster. He doesn't want to expand the court. Just gave a big speech about the affirmative, the United States Supreme Court striking down race-based affirmative action, but that's all he did. He's not taking any action to correct these things. So President Joseph Biden and Senator, AKA Shadow President Joe Manchin, are in lockstep. And it is important that the American people understand that. Now, Senator Murkowski was beautiful. I mean, she sounds so reasonable. I'm tired of, I try not to vote for the lesser of the two evils. Well, why is the everyday American people always asked to vote for the lesser of the two evils? So it's not that she wasn't making good points, but don't look behind the curtain and see the wizard of the wizard behind the curtain. That is exactly what she is. That is exactly what No Labels is. This is a flim-flam sham that is trying to be run against the American people. No difference, Cenk, as you laid out between President Joe Biden and Shadow President Manchin.
Yeah, so, and by the way, last thing on it, look at the infinite corporate greed. The super PAC for No Labels is stuffed to the brim with corporate money. And so they're like, Biden, he proposed some bills we didn't like. I mean, he didn't try to pass them and he didn't pass them. But maybe we go with Manchin, who is 100% corrupt, instead of this Biden guy who's walking around only 95% corrupt. And then they figure, well, if Manchin costs Biden the election and Trump wins, maybe he'll give us another $2 trillion in tax cuts. So for them, they're like win, win, win. It's just a question of how much they're gonna win. And that is a perfect summary of corruption in Washington.
Yeah.
Okay.
There it is.
Yep. All right, guys, we gotta go. We got a great second hour coming up for you guys with more amazing stories. But make sure you're checking out Senator Nina Turner on Rebel Headquarters, and make sure you're checking out John on Damage Report. And of course, Nina's on all of our programming as well. So watch all of that to see her more. Thank you, Nina and John. Love you guys. We'll see you soon. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.